And Chris, one of the things that struck me, you had Justices Alito and Thomas voting against the stay, saying they would have let part of Kacsmarek's ruling take effect. What stood out to you from Alito's dissent here?
I mean, well, I think there's two things. One, I think that we need to note the fact that Justice Thomas didn't write. And I think that there's multiple reasons why that might have happened. It might be that he just feels that he didn't want to join Alito's decision and wasn't in the mood to take a swing at the ultimate issue right now. But also it's possible that right now he thinks he should sit back a little as he deals with his own controversies. But as for Justice Alito, I think that what we saw was there was a line at the end of his opinion where he sort of was a bit defensive and was like, just regardless of what other people might say about this isn't a decision for me on the merits. This isn't about whether I think what the FDA did was appropriate. It was just about this stay, this request from DOJ to keep Kacsmarek's ruling from going into effect. But right then in the next sentence, he basically said that he didn't think that the harms that DOJ and Danco Laboratories, the drug maker, expressed would befall the nation if the ruling went into effect. He said that he didn't think that those were important enough for a stay. So he sort of tried to have it both ways there in his dissent last night.
What did you make of it?
The dissent was caustic. So the first thing I made out of it was just how sarcastic and biting it was, particularly with respect to the use of stays. That's been a tool of the conservatives on the court, particularly during the Trump presidency. It's the rise of what academics and particularly Steve Vladeck calls the shadow docket, cases that the Supreme Court decides without fully elaborated upon decisions, much less oral argument. And Alito was basically saying to the liberals, you've complained so many times when we've granted stays, and here you are doing it again in a totally unjustifiable situation. One of the stays that he criticized was one that was drafted by Justice Barrett. So he's even now fighting within his own side. The fact that we didn't hear from Justices Barrett and Kavanaugh here, we don't know how they voted, right? We don't know who the five are. We just know that Thomas and Alito were on the other side. They wouldn't have granted the stay. That makes me scratch my head about what the other folks were thinking, too.
I want to ask you, in addition to this case, conservatives plotting new ways to limit access to abortion medication, Politico reporting the influential anti-abortion group Students for Life on Wednesday launched the next phase of its campaign to use the nation's environmental laws to restrict the ability to terminate a pregnancy. In a citizen petition to the FDA, the group asked that access to the widely used abortion drug mifepristone be prohibited until the agency studies whether trace amounts of the pill in wastewater pose any risk to endangered or threatened species or designated critical habitats. I mean, it goes back to what I was reading in the introduction. They have become emboldened. They are looking for new legal ways to chip away at access. They are not backing down.
No, and in some respects, they've already done that. And we are all accepting that mifepristone is only going to be available in states where abortion is legal and that Congress would have to act. But here, Congress already has acted. The Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act allows the FDA to make decisions about drug safety and efficacy. And we have accepted the fact that states get to override that. I think that's a question that we need to litigate and think through over the next few years, too. And there are two cases pending right now, one in West Virginia, one in North Carolina, that raise the issue. Does the FDA's regulation of mifepristone supersede or preempt contrary state laws that restrict access to mifepristone?
Chris, new analysis from the New York Times reads, quote, in his concurrence in Dobbs, Chief Justice John Roberts said the majority had abandoned principles of judicial restraint at the cost of a serious jolt to the legal system. Friday's order avoided a jolt. How is this post-Dobbs era testing the role specifically of the Chief Justice?
I mean, the Chief Justice is in a very difficult position now that he said they were going to be facing in his Dobbs decision, and that even as far back last fall or two falls ago now, when Texas's SB 8 was being considered and the court let it go into effect. This is where the court is now, and they don't need his vote to get a majority opinion. Yesterday, he was able to maybe get as many as 7 votes willing to issue the stay, but as Lisa said, we don't know. And he's going to continue to face that. He's going to face that. We're going to see that a lot probably over the next 2 months as the court attempts to finish out this term. And then, as Lisa also said, this case is going to remain, and it's going to be coming up to the court probably next fall.
Lisa, it just strikes me that when Friday's ruling came down, there were people who were celebrating it as a win, and I understand that. But we're now in a moment where it feels as though all wins are simply defensive wins, where something worse is not happening, right? I mean, is that just the legal reality of where we are, or are there efforts you are watching that you think could actually advance and augment rights on the legal front?
I do think that the efforts at preemption could advance rights on the legal front. But to your point, where we are right now is we have Republicans controlling the House, and we have a firmly conservative, not only a Supreme Court, but a judiciary that in many respects was transformed by Donald Trump. Matthew Kacsmaryk is proof positive of how even a single appointment in a district court can really wreak havoc with people's lives. So in some respects, Alicia, that is where we are right now. And if folks want to see that change, we say all the time, elections have consequences.